Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the issue of revisiting EWS quota. Now, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has recently appointed a 3-member committee to revisit the criteria for 10% reservation for economically weaker sections, that is EWS, in educational institutions and government jobs. This came after Supreme Court's observations while hearing petitions challenging the government notice issued in July this year, which provides for 10% EWS quota in NEET admissions. According to a memorandum issued by the Union government on EWS quota earlier, only those persons who are not covered under the scheme of reservation for SCs, STs and OBCs and whose family has gross annual income below 8 lakh rupees are to be identified as EWSs for benefit of reservation. This income shall also include income from all sources, that is salary, agriculture, business, profession, etc. Also, the persons whose family own land holding of a certain size, such as at least 5 acres of agricultural land or a residential flat of at least 1,000 square feet, are excluded from the preview of this reservation. In today's episode, we will discuss and analyze all aspects of this issue, and for us to understand it much better, we have with us a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, I have with me here in the studio Mr. Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee, consulting editor with the Business Standard. Welcome, Bhattacharjee here. We also have Justice Gyan Sudha Mishra joining us, a former judge of the Supreme Court of India, and Professor Charan Singh is also joining us, former faculty of the IIM Bangalore and CEO of IGROW Foundation. Welcome all of you to Sunset TV. Let me begin with you, Shubhmoy, first, and let's start by putting things in context here and in perspective. When we are talking about revisiting EWS quota, let's first understand. I mentioned the basis as per the government's memorandum earlier and the ongoing case as well. What are we looking at when we talk about the quota for economically weaker section? It's a 10% slab and the criteria is there as well.
Yeah, Vishal, the first thing is no measure which is meant for social upliftment is ever etched in stone. That will never be looked at. I think it is a good idea that it undergoes periodic revision. So to that extent, I would say certainly these sort of things are a good idea. Now, as you rightly pointed out in your initial remarks, that the government has formed a panel to look at the income benchmark that has been set, the rupees 8 lakh criteria. Now, what happens is that in often debates of this sort, the number often takes precedence over the larger context. While you can say 8, somebody can say 9, somebody can say 7, those numbers can be revisited. And those are not the point. The point is the larger issue, which the court is also saying and on which the government is also agreed on, is that how do you best define somebody who's deprived economically? We are not talking about social deprivation here, we're largely talking about economically weaker sections. So how do you how do you calculate that? How do you measure that?
Okay.
And to the extent that if the measure becomes more transparent, the measure becomes more clear to everybody, that itself starts the basis of including more people.
Okay.
People get a belief and a faith that yes, the way it has been measured, the way it has been constructed, the way it is being looked at is something which sort of provides justice. And I think that is where we can posit this evening's argument here.
Okay, indeed, and that's pretty fair enough as well, making it more inclusive while at the same time ensuring that it does not hamper the prospects of others as well. Let me bring in the other two panelists also. Let me start with you, Justice Mishra, from a legal point of view. And if I have to look at the arguments which have been given in those petitions, which were argued in the Supreme Court as well after this decision was taken. There are several of them. One of them is about a breach of the 50% quota threshold. Also, the justification of the EWS reservation criteria and the ceiling as well, the ceiling of 8 lakh rupees annual income.
Actually, so far as the judicial perspective is concerned, all of you would agree that equality is the very basis, the foundation of our constitution. And equality means equal opportunity also. So if you look at the roots of the constitution when it was enacted and it was discussed, it is the equality which was the main reason for giving reservation and earmarking reservation to those sections who were downtrodden, who did not have enough opportunity to flourish in life. Now, over the years, while there can be no difficulty in accepting, and it was definitely a very welcome thing to do, but over the years, the experience also showed us that there are a particular section where economically weaker sections are there, irrespective of the caste. So, to my mind, if you go by the electoral prospects consideration, then of course we have very many reasons to say one section should be granted, and the other section should not be granted. But I, by training, have a judicial approach to the things, and I would not appreciate any kind of discrimination, even if it is on the basis of the economic backwardness. So in that sense, it has been a very welcome addition when in 2019, this 103rd amendment was introduced. But the larger question, and whatever little research I could do on this, I don't think the majority, I have an inkling that it has been a welcome decision. But at the same time, the difficult aspect is that how to earmark the economic backwardness.
Indeed.
Because if so far it is 8 lakh which has been earmarked for determining the economic backwardness of the backward classes category and also economically backwardness. That is a very, that to my mind is a very difficult task, how to determine and whether it is overlapping on the already existing reservation, and the other part is that it might also cross the boundary line of 50% given out in the first case on this Indra Sahni's case. So I think it would require a collective wisdom. It will require a collective thinking, especially of the economist, I would say, and of course also the perspective of the social scientists, that how to bring a balance between the two.
Let me bring in Professor Charan Singh here as well. We'll come to that, that second aspect also, Justice Mishra. But since you raised this point, and that seems, really important as well, Shubhmoy also referred to that in terms of the ceiling or the basis on which the economic backwardness has to be decided. Professor Singh, do you agree that that is the contentious issue here? It's not the EWS quota or the percentage of it. The most difficult part is to decide as to what should be the ceiling. Should it be 8 lakh? Should the other factors which are being counted, should they be added on, or should some of them be, let go of?
Firstly, I think, as I would look at it as an economist, the quota which EWS brings in is very, very important. You mentioned that I was faculty at IIM Bangalore, and I must say in the 5 years that I was there, people who came through the quota system, when they entered IIM Bangalore and when they left IIM Bangalore, there was a sea change. These were bright children. They might not be able to compete with the best because life has not given them the best situation. But once they have entered in through the reservation and they are meeting, interacting with the other students, they are as smart, sometimes smarter because they have a fire in the belly, and they would come out with such beautiful results. So the first point I would like to make is EWS is important, contributes significantly. And as an economist, I would look for the best labor available in the country, which is productive, which is also, if need be, jugadu, can think of situations and adapt to them quickly to give me output. So the first thing is first, EWS, to my mind, is the
Okay.
right thing. Does it exceed the 50%? Yes, that's been debated in the media and elsewhere. But I think even if it exceeds the 50%, it can be revisited. The nine bench case, as the justice was just mentioning, this issue can be revisited. Then the third issue that comes up is the income criteria. On the income criteria, I totally agree. Why and how did 8 lakh get fixed? Now, there's a background to it. The background to it is yes, it got 8 lakh fixed at this point. But if you look back, there was some criteria in the OBC which was 6 lakh at one point of time. And then looking at the cost factor, which is the consumer price index, it got multiplied by 1.36 times. That makes it 8.16. And so it was cut off at 8 lakh. Now, should that be 8 lakh or should it be reduced from 8 lakh? I think that is debatable. Where I stand on the situation, my situation is economically weaker sections of the society.
Okay.
And 8 lakh to me turns out to be reasonably okay. It's a family income. If you look at the family income, that means if two members of the family are earning and there's a family of five, three children, and they're spending, this looks okay to me. Now, the issue is that people who are below this, and it is not just 8 lakh is the upper limit, there are people below it. And of course, then there's a poverty line, which is far below the 8 lakh threshold. Now, these are the people who have, unfortunately, not had the privileges of studying in the best schools. And therefore, as you know, the issue came up from NEET admission. And in the NET admission, this became an important issue.
Okay.
And therefore, I think the criteria, if ever, can be retained at 8 lakh or change very slightly. But to me, this looks pretty all right.
Since you mentioned these numbers, Professor Singh, and I was also looking at some figures here. In terms of this criteria of 8 lakh rupees as an annual income, now there is a huge percentage of population which then falls below this category. Then again comes the counter question or counter argument of will just a 10% slab will do justice to this much people who fall below that criteria?
Yes, this was exactly the thought in my mind too. Given the income inequalities in the country, especially as they've been precipitated after COVID, 8 lakh is a huge, is a cutoff number. Many people will fall below this 8 lakh. Totally agree with you. But my suggestion would be to continue with the 8 lakh as of now, and then see, as it turns out, there's a number of students who come through this 8 lakh criteria. Now, let me also just give you one more aspect of the whole story. As I mentioned, it comes from the admissions to NEET. The children whom we have to compromise at a great extent in the selection criteria,
Okay.
the professors and the academic scholars have to work much more, many a times, to bring the students up to the level of others.
Okay.
Many times, many times, the students are not able to weather the pressure. Sometimes these students also succumb to certain situations and lead to other complications.
Okay.
So therefore, continuing in the beginning with this 8 lakh to me seems okay, though I totally concede to the point that you made, especially after COVID, that the bulk of the population may fall under this.
Okay. Shubhmoy, is this not a catch-22 situation here when we're trying to, revisit this entire thing? One is that legally speaking or judicial argument would be that it should not cross the threshold of 50%. That obviously is there. But the other part is that, it cannot fulfill the need of everyone, because that 8 lakh ceiling itself, we were talking about earlier, you mentioned that it can be, even brought back or it can be further raised as well, as per the needs might be or as per the discussions. But when we look at the data, the larger data, it doesn't then end up fulfilling the needs of majority of the population.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, which both Justice Mishra and Dr. Charan Singh was pointing out. the way to go about it, I mean, the best way to solve it, we are looking at educational institutions where people would be joining. That's where the thing, NEET was one of the trigger points. Expand them. That's the way to go about it. The challenge is because people, the students coming from the underprivileged sections versus students who are just probably on the border, that's where the trigger comes along. So essentially what do? Expand. I mean, there's been a good thing that has happened. We have expanded the number of IIMs. It was 6 earlier. It's now gone up to something like 18 or 20. NIITs, the IIITs, they have expanded.
So infrastructure will have to be expanded.
Expanded and expanded very fast. And once it is expanded, that expansion takes place, and it's not that it's a spurious expansion, because the economy needs it. We are planning to grow. We are hoping to grow at above 9% or so. If with that sort of an economy, the amount of scientific and technical manpower that we need, personnel that we need, is enormous. Every sector is crying out for technical people. So I think the answer is that even though there will be a problem of trainers and others to come in, but that can be done by bringing in video, graphic training, and all sorts of stuff. You can do a mix and match, but rapidly expand, scale up the capacity of training across the country.
Okay.
In every sort of thing. I think that would go a long way to make people feel that there are opportunities there.
Okay.
I think that is the first thing that I would suggest should be happening.
And something which has been happening as well in terms of numbers.
Absolutely.
If you look at
Yeah.
since
So
these petitions were to deal with the NEET exams, the seats have increased considerably. But that's a very valid point which you're making, Shubhmoy. Looking at it from judicial and legal angle, Justice Mishra, how, in your view, how should be the move ahead from here onwards? What's the way out?
Actually, the way out, of course, would be to discuss either in the parliament or before the courts. And since the court is already seized of the matter, because, I've always felt that on a sensitive issue and which affects the citizens at large, we must have viewpoints from all cross sections and then come to a conclusion. So I would not go to the extent of saying that what I am saying is the only right answer, but it may be one of the viewpoints. So I would say, or rather I would think that, first of all, because very many petitions have come up before the court, where they've even challenged bringing in 10% backwardness. So I think the first question would be whether that is at all to be upheld or not, because one of the reasons is that it is encroaching upon the limit of 50%.
Okay.
But a very wise step, I would say, have been taken, that the seats have been increased. It's not that it needs to be understood by all stakeholders that there's no encroachment on the already existing quota for the economic the reserved category.
Indeed.
So there is no need for concern that the economically, if a reservation has been given, that will encroach upon their quota, because that has been left untouched. It is only the increase. So if the seats have been increased for giving it to 10% economic on disparity, to my mind, that the entire the percentage would have to be looked, including the numbers which have been increased.
Okay.
I don't know whether I've been able to express myself properly.
Okay.
That's
pretty much clear, Justice Mishra.
Is that when the seats if it had been increased, the seats have been increased in that category, it is not an encroachment on the already existing reservation. So, but of course, it's before the Constitution bench.
Okay.
Let's see, and we can put our points of view before the court.
Indeed.
And then reach a just conclusion.
Indeed, indeed. Those are the two institutions which will have to ultimately take a final call, the judiciary as well as the parliament there. Coming back to the socio-economic issue, Professor Singh, we have the data before us, as you were earlier pointing out. We have the problem also before us. Now we'll have to look for various solutions, and there will have to be dynamic solutions to it. One of them is obviously suggested by both, Shubhmoy and Justice Mishra as well. In your viewpoint, what are the other options available?
So let me just share a quick problem with you, and then I'll tell you the solutions that I have. The problem is that, yes, we have increased the number of seats in these colleges and IIMs and IITs, but the professors are not increased. So the pressure on the professors increases, and whatever they studied during their PhD and college days is all that they can retain if they have to teach so many students, check their papers, look at their assignments. A college professor or a university professor needs at least 50% of the time to engage in active research, dynamic research, published in leading journals, and to make a name in the world as an elite university, they have to compete with Harvard's and Stanford's. That needs lots of time for research, which then gets lost if you increase the seats and tell the professors to check 150 papers instead of 75 that he can check.
Okay.
So there is a limit to increasing the seats, and that can't be done. If you increase the number of IIMs, IITs, please remember you won't get the best professors. You will be compromising on the quality of education.
Okay.
So therefore, that's not a solution. I have been thinking for a long time now, is it necessary that every Indian should have a MA degree? Or is it necessary that many, many more people should do a PhD? Should a basic qualification and then give respect to that basic qualification not be sufficient? That needs to be thought as a society. And as the justice just said, the parliament has to take a view on it, because we can only give views. So to my mind, it's not necessary to push and as a country ensure that every girl and boy goes into doing a master's. That's one thing.
Okay.
The other thing, I look at a game changer now. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, teleeducation, availability of the best professors speaking to you on YouTube lectures are going to change the way students think and get educated. Therefore, the 10% reservation which we have done so far, maybe a time will come 5 to 10 years from today when we need to revisit it and say, look, there are so many opportunities available on internet. And therefore, saying that a child was deprived of the best education is no more applicable. And if that's not applicable, then quota system for admissions to colleges may also not be applicable. And let me also tell you, between these elite institutions that we spoke of, IIMs, IITs, some of them are really elite. Look at the quality of professors at IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, and Calcutta. They won't be, you can't compare them with other IIMs which have just started. Similar is the story with the IITs. So therefore, if these professors, and of course, Harvard professors are, again, of course, it's a different country, different context, different business environment. But within the country, we have enough elite institutions where the professors are beating or competing with the very best in the world. Now, these educated classes are available on internet, YouTube, then of course that discrepancy or deprivation is no more there. And therefore the need for a criteria may also not be there. As of now, I think it's necessary and it should continue, needs to be revisited, both the amount as well as the concept itself every 10 years.
Okay. Quick concluding comment from you, Shubhmoy, before we wrap this up. Quite a lot of, out-of-box suggestions which are coming in from Professor Singh. One is, do you think that, yes, these might be the way forward, given the way the technology is moving ahead, given the way, the entire education system is moving forward? And also, coming back to the moot question, it's all to do with the ceiling when we're looking at the EWS quota.
Well, first of all, the ceiling. I mean, it's difficult to think what the Constitution Bench will, in their sagacity, will suggest. But I still have a feeling, and I think Justice Mishra will agree with me, that I think probably they'll not like the 10%, the 50% quota to be breached, if they are going by the Indrasani judgment. If that is so, then it becomes for the government very important to tell that, look, that quota might not be increased in terms of the percentage, but what I'm doing is I'm expanding. I'm expanding rapidly. And that message must be made very clear, very audible, very visible.
Okay.
I don't buy the argument that, there'll be only a limited number of professors who can teach. There are lots of retired professors. There are lots of people around here in India who can teach 100 more times more students. I don't think that's a problem at all. We just need to expand our educational capacity very fast.
Okay.
If that is visible, then that limit will be something which the judiciary would have given a sage decision. The parliament would then pushes the government that, look, come along, get this thing expanded very fast. Then we shall have a social commitment.
Okay.
Otherwise, there could be crossfires.
Okay. Now that's a pretty apt sum up from all of you. Thank you so much, Shubhmoy there, as well as Professor Charan Singh and Justice Mishra as well, for sharing your views and insight with our viewers. As our experts pointed out, various aspects of this issue, that is the EWS quota, why there is a need to go ahead and revisit this quota, what are the solutions as per these eminent citizens who were there on our panel. Let's wait and watch as to what the government's response is and what does the constitutional bench, before which the matter is pending, comes out with a decision on this aspect. We'll keep you updated and we'll come back again with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.